Please like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. Also, please tell me where you're watching from. The night behind the market. The only reason I was still in the city that week was because of my uncle's injury. He ran a small bookstall tucked behind the spice market, and when he slipped on an oily stair and broke his leg, someone had to step in. That someone turned out to be me. Nico, fresh out of school, not particularly interested in books or markets, and definitely not prepared for what happened that Thursday night. The day had been long. Crowds came and went, bargaining over faded poetry books and cheap paperbacks. I closed up shop just after 9, locked the metal gate, and ducked into the cramped back room my uncle used as storage. It doubled as my sleeping spot for the week, and after shoving a few boxes aside, I lay down on a flattened wool blanket. The scent of dried herbs wafted through the walls from the adjacent stalls, but I didn't mind it. What I minded was the silence. The spice market was never this quiet. Even at night, you'd usually hear someone, music from the street cafes, delivery men shouting, the occasional drunk laughter echoing off the tin roofs. But that night, there was nothing. Just this unnatural stillness that made me sit up without knowing why. At first, I figured maybe it was because of the festival happening uptown. Everyone might have cleared out for fireworks or dancing, but that didn't explain the noise I heard next. It was faint, like something brushing against cardboard. I thought maybe it was a rat. This place had plenty, but then there was the sound of something heavier, a dull thump. I froze. The sound had come from the front near the gate. Maybe someone is trying to break in. I reached for the wrench my uncle used to fix his rickety shelves and crept toward the sliver of light coming from the doorframe. I peeked through and saw nothing at first. Just rows of closed stalls, crates, and the faint flicker of a street lamp. Then I noticed the gate to our stall wasn't locked anymore. The bolt hung loose. I was sure I had secured it. I stepped out, keeping close to the wall, and scanned the narrow alley between stalls. Still nothing. I should have gone back inside, locked the door, called someone. But curiosity beat out common sense. I walked to the gate and pushed it open. The lamp at the end table, an old brass thing that barely stood upright, was on the ground. I picked it up, heart hammering. It hadn't fallen. It had been knocked over. I could tell by how far it had rolled and the dent on the base. Someone had been here. Still, I found nothing else disturbed. No missing books, no broken glass. I convinced myself it might have been a stray cat or a drunk stumbling through the alley. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I locked the gate again, double-checked it, and returned to the back room. Sleep didn't come easy. I must have dozed off because the next thing I remember is the sound of dripping. Slow, rhythmic, too close. I opened my eyes and saw nothing unusual, but the dripping kept going. I got up and followed it past the boxes to the far wall where the air felt colder. There was a narrow hatch there, used to access the old ventilation shaft. It had always been sealed shut, or so I thought. Now, the hatch was open an inch. I stared at it, heart thudding. The sound was coming from inside the shaft, a soft, wet drip. I backed away slowly, unsure what to do, when I heard movement overhead. Not the sound of the market, not the wind. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, moving across the roof. And then, suddenly, running. Heavy feet pounding across the metal above. Me heading toward the stairs that led down behind the market stalls. I didn't wait to see who it was. I grabbed my phone and my keys and bolted out the back exit, slamming the door behind me. The alley was empty, but I didn't stop. I ran, past shuttered stalls and through the side gate that led to the main street. Only when I reached the road did I dare look back. There was no one there. Just the quiet again. The heavy, unnatural silence. I called the local patrol from a nearby kiosk. When they arrived, they searched the market but found no one. Nothing missing. Nothing broken. The officers checked the hatch in the back room and noticed marks around the edges, scratches like someone had used a tool to pry it open. It turns out the shaft connected to an old storeroom above a neighboring stall that had been unused for years. Someone had climbed down, maybe expecting the place to be empty, or maybe they had been watching me for days, waiting for a chance. They hadn't taken anything, which made it worse. It meant they were there for something else, or someone. The patrol couldn't say how long the person had been inside, or how they got in. No fingerprints, no signs of forced entry on the gates or doors. Just those scratches on the hatch and the sound I would never forget. It's been months since that night. My uncle's leg healed. I moved back home, but sometimes when I walk through old markets or hear the sound of dripping water, I feel it again. That chill at the back of my neck. The feeling that someone is watching, waiting. That night behind the market, something changed in me, and I don't think I'll ever sleep quite the same again. Didn't mind taking her. Hours, money's tight, and graveyard shifts at the Ardell Suites are usually a lot of sitting around, answering the occasional call from a guest who can't find the ice machine or needs more towels. The lobby was empty when I came in. I nodded at Curtis, the day clerk, who was halfway through a sandwich and ready to clock out. He tossed me the key card for the front desk drawer and mumbled something about room 12 requesting a wake-up call at 4. The room had been booked under a cash payment, no ID on file. It wasn't unusual in this part of town. We were the kind of place people passed through, not stayed in. I settled in behind the desk. The night was still, nothing but the low hum of the vending machine in the corner and the occasional creak from the old plumbing system. Around 11, I grabbed one of the complimentary coffees from the lobby machine and sat by the desk's small security monitor, cycling through the grainy black and white feeds. Room 12 caught my eye. The door was slightly ajar. I checked the log. The guest had checked in around 7, paid for one night, and hadn't made any requests since the wake-up call. By morning, room 12 was empty. No checkout, no call. Just gone. The bed was remade when I checked, the bag gone, towels replaced. The only sign anyone had been there was a faint smudge on the inside of the bathroom door that hadn't been fully scrubbed away. I didn't tell Curtis the details when he came in to relieve me. I just passed him the key card and clocked out. That afternoon, a news alert popped up on my phone. Woman reported missing near 8th and Cypress, about 4 blocks from the hotel. Last seen around 9 p.m. the night before. There's no evidence tying that man to anything. Nothing concrete. But I keep thinking about the open door, the streak on the bathroom, his hand. I still work nights sometimes, still walk past room 12. But I always make sure it's locked tight, and I never ever go inside. I was closing up the family cafe when I got the call from Jaya. Her voice was shaky, not scared exactly, more uncertain in a way that made me uneasy. She'd run out of gas on the edge of the old ferry road. Said her phone was dying and her flashlight wasn't doing much. I offered to come get her. She protested at first, but she always did that when she didn't want to feel like a burden. I didn't listen and left 5 minutes later. The ferry road used to be a big deal in town, back before the bridge was built. Now it was mostly weeds, gravel, and the occasional teenager looking for a place to drink in secret. No lights, no homes nearby, and the thick mangroves made it feel like the road itself didn't want to be found. My moped rattled down the uneven path, and I kept my eyes sharp, scanning for Jaya's little blue hatchback. I saw it eventually, parked sideways near the old kiosk, like she'd drifted in without stopping properly. I slowed, parked a few feet behind her and walked up, trying to see through the foggy glass. No movement. Jaya? I knocked gently on the driver's side window. Nothing. I tried the door. It opened. Empty. The first thing I noticed was her phone tossed on the passenger seat, screen cracked. Second thing, her scarf was tangled on the emergency brake like it had caught as she climbed out. I stepped back and looked around. No sound. No footprints in the gravel. Just my own breathing, too loud all of a sudden. I tried calling her name again. Louder. Still nothing. My heart started doing that fast skip thing it does when I can't explain something. I pulled out my phone to call someone, anyone. But just as I did, I saw something move in my peripheral vision. Not big, just a shape low to the ground, disappearing into the mangroves. My first thought was about animals, maybe a stray dog. Then I heard it, a scraping sound, like fabric dragging over wood. Then a voice, not Jaya's, a man's, humming. Froze. My thumb hovered over the call button, but I didn't press it. Something about that voice didn't sound right. Not threatening exactly. Too casual for that. Like whoever it was had no reason to be afraid out here. Which meant they probably felt in control. I ducked behind Jaya's car and listened. The humming got louder. Then it stopped. I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, crunching the gravel. Then a second set. And a third. I didn't wait to be seen. I crouched and moved, keeping low, making for the path between the trees that led toward the canal. I knew this area, used to fish here as a kid. I figured if I could get to the canoe shack, I could hide or maybe even make a break across the water if it came to that. But as I reached the shack, I heard a splash. Not mine. I wasn't alone. I slipped inside the wooden structure, shut the door quietly, and crouched behind an overturned crate. My breath caught when I saw her, Jaya, sitting against the far wall, her hands tied in front of her, eyes wide but alert. I rushed to her, whispering her name. She nodded, but before I could untie her, we heard the crunch again, closer, right outside. I held my breath. She mouthed, 3 of them. The door creaked open slowly. A silhouette stood in the frame, then another behind it. I didn't wait. I grabbed the oar leaning near the wall and swung as hard as I could. It connected with something. It screamed. I didn't look. I grabbed Jaya's hand and we ran. Branches whipped my face, mud clung to my legs, but we didn't stop. Not when one of them called after us in that same sing-song voice. Not when I heard them chasing. We broke through the trees onto the back road near the drainage canal. Lights. A fisherman's truck. I screamed, waved, did anything to be seen. The truck stopped. We dove in the back without asking. The man driving didn't even question us. Just looked in the rearview mirror, muttered something in Tamil, and took off. We didn't speak until we were back in town. Later, the police found Jaya's car where I'd first seen it, but not the canoe shack. It had burned down sometime that night. No evidence, no names, just smoke and ash where we'd stood, and the sound of humming that still crawls into my dreams when I forget to leave the light on.